Good morning and welcome to Changing the World with God and with Good. Well, for a few minutes, I get to share with you God and His will for humanity without ethnic bias, gender bias, religious bias, political bias, or national bias. And for a moment, I'm going to talk in three parts dealing with this particular message. So stay tuned to all three messages. But today, I want to talk from the subject, the mustard seed. The mustard seed. And today I want to talk about seeing beyond what you can see. The mustard seed, what you can't see. And God inspired this message, and I want to share this message with you because so many of you, and I've been guilty as well, of overreacting to things that we see. And today I want to help you to slow down a little bit and settle down and not overreact at what you see, concluding that what you see is all that there is. And because a lot of times what we see has a tendency of convincing us that this is all that it is. And if you've seen that picture over and over and you've gone to that place expecting something over and over and all you're met with is the same thing, supposedly, what you see out of your natural eyes appear to be the same thing, then it has a tendency of creating within us frustration, and has a tendency of creating within us a disposition of losing our way, overreacting, losing our minds at what we see. I mean, just think about it. I mean, we look at situations, economic hardship in places like Africa, places like India, places like Pakistan. And many of us conclude based upon what we see and based upon the human suffrage that's going on in those places, that things aren't getting any better. I mean, our perceptions, what we see out of our natural eyes, create or shape our perception. So we perceive that things aren't getting any better. I mean, you look at the fighting in the Middle East. Jews and Palestinians, Jews and Muslims, Christians and Muslims, and to the natural eye, one would think, and I mean, rightly so, that things aren't getting any better. In fact, they may even be getting worse. I mean, you look at the situations in the U.S. As it relates to race relations, and you've got little black kids that are being killed and murdered by police officers. You've got, a high tension of animosity that appears to be on the surface as it relates to race relations. And out of the natural eye, one would think that things aren't getting any better. In fact, again, they may even be getting worse. I mean, somebody, and I know that I'm talking to somebody that's looking at your relationship, and what you see is telling you that things are stagnated, things aren't getting any better, things may actually be on the decline and the decay, and that you're just fed up with it. You're seeing the same thing that you saw last week, that you saw the week before, that you saw last month, and out of your natural eyes it seems as if things aren't getting better. I mean, some of you are dealing with wayward kids, and you're telling yourself, based upon what you see, that this kid wants nothing out of life. They're not trying to do anything or be anything. I mean, it's based upon our optics, what you see. This is why sometimes we have to slow down and be able to not look out of our natural eyes, but our spiritual eyes, because our natural eyes will cause us to look at our finances and decide that, you know what, Lord, it just ain't getting any better based upon what I see, But again, I'm here today to caution you, beloved. Caution you to slow down and settle down. And I want to use the mustard seed as an example to encourage you to look beyond what you see. Because there are some things that are going on that you can't see. And if you allow your natural eyes to convince you to draw a conclusion, what you see ain't always what it is. And again, I want to use the mustard seed because so many of us lose our minds. So many of us overreact at what we see, not realizing that, again, things aren't always as they appear to be. Now, again, I want you to think about the mustard seed. And imagine that you've planted a mustard seed. Just go with me for a minute and imagine that this mustard seed you planted, you went to the place that you had planted that mustard seed day in and day out, week in and week out, and you continually went to that mustard, to the spot where you planted the mustard seed. Now, to the natural eye, if that mustard seed hadn't begun to sprout itself and become something that is useful and beneficial to you, many of you will conclude that nothing is going on. That mustard seed, you would either conclude that it is not going to grow, that it's not growing. And many of you, if you're not careful, you'll just completely give up on the mustard seed, stop expecting anything of it, and then just decide that you're not even going to go back to the place where you originally planted the mustard seed. Why? All because your eyes had told you nothing was happening. I mean, it's not beneficial to continually go down this road, go down this place, go and expect something when all I find is that nothing is happening. We would conclude, many of us, that we're just wasting our time, that nothing's going on. But again, I caution you this morning, beloved, that just because you can't see what's going on doesn't mean that nothing's actually going on. I mean, we conclude that nothing is happening. We do it in our relationships. We do it with our kids. We do it as it relates to our dreams. We don't see that it's happening out of our natural eyes, and we just completely abandon those things. And many of us abandon our belief in God because, we've been in this situation long enough, and God is infinitely strong enough and wise enough, and if he was willing to get me out of the situation, he would get me out of the situation. He's seen what I've been going through. He knows the heartache and the hardship that I've been in. Now, if something was really happening, then I could tell. I would be able to see it. But again, I remind you, beloved, using the mustard seed, that everything that you see ain't all that it is. Because again, if you had gone to that place where you had planted that mustard seed and just looked for the harvest, you would not have realized that underneath what you could see under the earth, there was a whole lot of things going on. There was a whole lot of growth going on with that mustard seed. That mustard seed was fighting to become something, but all you could see was that it wasn't producing anything yet. This is why you got to be careful not to overreact and lose your mind at what you see and then conclude that nothing is happening, because like that mustard seed, there's things going on that you can't see, beloved, that is working for your good. But if all you rely upon is what you see, then you miss it. You'll miss that. Yes, I've been going down here to this place a week, a month, and the mustard seed still hadn't sprouted yet, and it still hadn't produced anything for me yet. It's useless. He's not going to do right. She's not going to do right. The job is not going to provide me what I need. Why am I wasting my time? Because if I look at the situation out of my natural eyes, I can see that it's not producing what I need indeed, nothing is happening. In fact, things may in actuality begin worse. So why am I going to continue based upon what I see? But beloved, sometimes you've got to close your natural eyes and you've got to be able to see what God is doing underneath the surface. You've got to understand that things happen spiritually before they ever happen in the physical. You've got to realize that just because I can't see it don't mean that it ain't happening. Just because I can't see it out of my natural eyes doesn't mean that God isn't moving things around for my good. Just because it looks like it's jacked up, it looks like it's messed up, it looks like it's dying or it's decayed, it looks like it's not going to produce a harvest. You've got to be careful, beloved, not to give up on that thing just because you cannot see it. You've got to realize there are some things percolating under the surface that you can't see. And if you abandon the baby, if you abort the baby, that you're going to negate all that was going on underneath the surface to get you to the blessing. Somebody needs to know that the seed is still working itself out. It hadn't produced a harvest yet, but it's still going through the process. You can't speed up the process, beloved. Sometimes God has a set time for the thing to manifest itself, and there is no amount of worry, there is no amount of going to the place that you planted the seed, there is no amount of anything that you can do to hasten the sprouting of the seed. What you can do is begin to shut your eyes and know that if God planted it, that he's capable of making it come to fruition. If God said it would be, then you've got to believe that it will be. See, this is something, and I'm not going to get into the next message, but beloved, all I say is lean not to what you see out of your natural eyes solely. Yes, God made us. He created us two parts. We're part spiritual and we're part fleshly. Yes, there has to be balance. You got to use your natural eyes, but you also, beloved, have to be able to look out of your spiritual eyes and allow what you see out of your spiritual eyes to be just as prevalent and important as what you see out of your natural eyes. Because again, the natural eyes have a way of deceiving you. They have a way of tricking you, just like that man might have tricked you, just like that woman might have tricked you and told you something that really wasn't going to manifest itself. But out of those spiritual eyes, again, you got to know that God wouldn't place you in a situation that's not for your good. You got to understand that just because you can't see it, sometimes you got to go to God and let God guide you. So many of us are trying to guide ourselves based upon what we see instead of allowing God to guide our hearts and then allow us to see out of our spiritual eyes. Beloved, just because you can't see it out of your natural eyes doesn't mean that God isn't working things out for you. And I'm here today to tell you, don't abandon it because you can't see it. Realize that just because you can't see it don't mean that it's not getting better. Don't mean that there's not growth going on. Don't mean that things are working itself out. And it just takes a little patience. A little patience. I love you. I'm going to pick up on this message tomorrow. Still dealing with the seed. Still dealing with the seed. But we're going to look at a different aspect of the mustard seed. Today I just want to leave you with the reality that just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not working itself out for you. Because God is working it out just for you. I love you. I thank you. And until next time, goodbye.